Microphone on. You hear me all right? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, June 6th. I am going to close our executive session and resume the open public meeting, and I'm going to start with a roll call. Commissioner Bell?
Present.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Here.
Commissioner Shepard is also here. All three commissioners are present. I'm going to read our advisory committee meeting schedule, then we'll do public comment and move into our regular scheduled business. For our advisory committee, we have the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, or the BIAC. Their next meeting is July 13th at 4 p.m., and that is both in person and on Zoom. Our MAC, or our Marina Advisory Committee, is on summer break, and they will resume meetings on September 12th. There are a couple ways to participate in the meeting. Thank you to everyone who is here today in person. It's always nice to see folks. You can also participate on Zoom or on our YouTube stream. We're going to move to public comment next. I have two folks signed up. If anyone else in the room wants to speak, you're welcome to come up after to the mic. And if anybody on Zoom wants to speak, I will call for Zoom a public comment after the folks in the room. First is Bert Weber.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Bert Weber. I live at 3539 Cliffside Drive, and I'm here today to talk about my concerns about lead. But before I do that, I'd like to share with you some good news. One of the vessels, my favorite vessel in Squalicum Harbor, is the Snow Goose that's been here for 25 years and pretty well known for some things. But what sticks in my mind most is that it has, for all that time, offered school programs to Bellingham and Whatcom County school children. And to date, this program has served over, if you can believe it, 36,000 students. And it turned out to be in risk. Bellingham School District, which was one of the supporters, as you may have heard in other evangelists, has cut back almost everything that they are doing. And it's a very sad story. But what that meant to Dan Lydeen, the owner and operator of the Snow Goose, was he just couldn't do it anymore. So he was figuring on packing up and not doing it. He has a really good living doing the charter boat business to Alaska, so he doesn't need the school program. But he's a teacher by trade. So anyway, he told me about it. I got the word, and I thought, well, good. It turns out that the Community Foundation was able to raise funds to support the program for another 5 years. So there'll be maybe another 5,000 students who get a chance to go down and see where the Port of Bellingham is, what Bellingham Bay is all about, and some of the science that is important for all of us to understand. So that's the good news. The other is...
Dr. Weber, was that the Whatcom Community Foundation?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, our ongoing saga. It's been a while since I've been here, and I know you all know that I am of particular concern in the lead that's in the aviation fleet going out of Bellingham. And where do I want to start with this? I guess to acknowledge that a year ago, just about a year ago, Mr. Fix, on behalf of the Port of Bellingham and the airport, wrote a really lengthy statement in which he pulled together his ideas about why the Port of Bellingham was not going to ban the sale of lead at the airport. And since that time, in the years since, there's been a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of things that have happened, and a lot of information that has come forth that wasn't there before. And I guess I first, though, should recognize that the ability of the port to allow aviation fuel has been not curtailed, put off to the future at some point, in that the state legislature in Washington recently, just a few weeks ago, said that they were not going to ban the sale of lead. And there's, I've got Interesting that one of the supporters is this group here, Lumba. So I don't get it wrong. AOPA, maybe some of you know it. Their calling card is Your Freedom to Fly. And they have been strongly opposed to curtailing the use of lead, and they came out and advocated very strongly to the legislature that it shouldn't happen. And as it turned out, they prevailed. And I just want to read to you, it's because I'm puzzled. I'm puzzled about why there is this resistance to banning a poison that's in our air. The AOP says, the law would have serious negative economic and safety impacts on aviation and airports and would have set a bad precedent affecting the entire aviation system. Okay, that was their point of view. Now, I don't have anything to say about the negative economic impact. You're in a much better position to know about that. But the thing that I've heard about from pilots and from organizations is the concern about abandoning lead in aviation fuel is one of safety. No, not safe in what sense? I've read my way through the literature and I can't find anything that's been done, any study that's been done that has showed that small planes, the general aviation planes, that use leaded gasoline are any safer than the ones that don't, the ones that use unleaded gasoline. And if anybody knows and can send the information to my director, I would appreciate it. But I'd like to look at the safety issue. When I talk to pilots, I say, what is this about the safety? And almost always they refer to octane level of the fuel. Pilots that are using leaded fuel are used to an octane level in their fuel of 100. And they call it 100 low lead. That's the abbreviation for it. So the whole question is about octane. What's that all about? And I didn't even know, what does octane mean? I always thought, well, that tells you how well your car would perform. It really doesn't. It tells you really how well protected the internal parts of the engine are, and particularly how they can prevent knock, which is bad. And I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that that would be the thing that most pilots that use leaded fuel would say. So let's unpack that a little bit. 100 low level is the kind of the grail of what people are looking for in a new fuel. And it's not available. I don't know of any alternative fuel that is up at 100 100 octane level. So we'll go back. Let's talk to the manufacturers of the engines, mostly the engines that are in the Cessna 170s, and listen to them. And they say their engines are engineered and work perfectly well on an octane level of 80. You got an octane level 80, they're happy with it. And I know that they've taken attention to the concerns that pilots have, and they have what they call hardened valves, because that's where all the knocking occurs. So anyway, that's what the grail is, and that's why it's so difficult. It's very impossible to really get an alternative fuel that doesn't have lead, that's got 100 octane level. But who needs it? The octane level the engineers and the manufacturers of the engine say is 80. That's okay. And the FAA, that has a say in these kind of things, is a little more conservative. It says they need to have an octane level of 100. So there becomes unleaded fuel with an octane level of 90 is okay with the FAA. And oops, one little thought there, it slipped away. Okay, so do we have any like that are available? Some things that are FAA approved have an octane level that's appropriate. We don't. We don't have it. They promise to say it's coming. They've been saying that for 30 years. that they're going to develop a fuel that is okay. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, so we have an octane level of 90 as the FAA approved. Is there anything available? Well, there is. There's a company called Swift that sells a non-leaded fuel for general aviation planes that has been approved by the FAA. So there is one option. It's not very popular, though. It doesn't reach that holy grail of 100 octane, so it's not getting used. So when I ask myself, are there any other sources around that meet the FAA's requirement of 90 octane level? And it turns out there is. The gas station store that I go down to get the gas for my chainsaw and for the alternate generator that I have, that has the one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is ethanol free. Ethanol is not good. It attracts water. It's not a good thing to have in an airplane's gas station. So here we got it referred. We're looking for an octane level of 90 ethanol free. And where can you find that? Well, the service station on the outskirts of the airport have ethanol free 92 octane. So it's not, it's a two notches over, whatever that means, what the FAA approval is. So you could go down and pick up gas from that gas station, and put it into your plane, and it will be safe to use. Now, just for purposes, and I'd like to know if there's any people who have evidence about that not being a true statement, that this gas is totally safe to use. Sorry, Bobby, I saw you wondering there, and I wondered what you were thinking.
Well, aviation gas and gas at a regular gas station are usually a couple of different mixes. So
Well,
I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think as soon as there's a fuel that's proven and accepted by all the users, I mean, if I have an airplane and I'm not comfortable with flying it at under 100 octane, and I think that I'm probably going to push back until they come with something that is 100 octane that's safe for me, I feel safe to fly with. So there's two sides of the story. There's your side, Dr. Weber, and I get that. I understand it.
Yeah, okay.
And I'd like to get there if we could.
so that's a
However,
good time
I also understand the
to
aviator's side, that they would like to have the right stuff to put in their older engine airplanes, because I don't believe there's some older engines that will fly very well without the lead.
Yeah, okay, so the thing is that what we're dealing with now, Bobby, are things that people believe and things that we know. And I go by the things that we know. I trust the engineers and I trust the scientists. It's a person who has been having, throughout the whole of their life, the privilege of doing what they want to do and not being told that they can't do it. I don't think we have that space any longer.
Well, my rebuttal would be, I've had an awful lot of engineers and an awful lot of scientists tell me a lot of things that never were true. So just because they're an engineer and a scientist doesn't mean they're right. So there's a platform in the middle somewhere that everybody needs to get to. And when we get there and understand it, we'll change what we have at the airport.
And you know, if that were the case, if lead was not a toxin, I'd say that's fine to go ahead. But this is the second part of what I want you to hear today and what I said in the notes that I sent all of you. The FAA in the last year has been looking very, very carefully at leaded gasoline. And as you saw, if you looked in the mail that I sent you, they are not of the opinion, but they have the knowledge that lead in the vicinities of leaded aviation gas in the vicinities of airports leads to a much higher body burden of lead than those who don't. The evidence is now quite clear that lead in leaded aviation gas is what the EPA says is a public risk. We're talking about a public hazard. So we have to balance that knowledge against somebody's belief or desire they want to have their 100 octane gas. I think it's untenable. The airport has not been at all successful in keeping planes away from the residences around it. And so I think it's absolutely fair to say that our general aviation airplane are causing a public health hazard. And that I don't think, you're shaking your head again, you're not going to believe that one either.
That's your opinion. I'd like
Pardon?
to clarify
No,
that that's your opinion.
That's the scientific conclusion of the Environmental Protection Agency. And you want to reject it? There are lots of people that do.
I'm not rejecting it, but I'm not agreeing with it either until they come and test our airport, I guess. And, you know, we've been on and on and on this with thing. I think it's 3 minutes. I think we've taken a lot of time for this.
Okay,
but
I got it quiet.
It's, when we can do something, we will do something.
You can do something now.
Well,
Yeah, so we'd have to have a disagreement about that. However, I can say that the whole thing is percolating. It's of interest in the community, and this is not the last that we will hear from it. And I really thank you for your approval. I know that, or your listening, not shutting me down. I could have, but anyway, so be it. Hope to see you. Well, I guess I got to say until next time. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one other person signed up, Mark Geary, is it?
Jerry.
Jerry.
Good afternoon. Thank you all. I'm Mark Jerry. I'm from Bellingham, Washington, as many people. My children are here as well today. I'm a B-man in the local International Longshore and Warehouse Union. And I really do appreciate all of your efforts that have allowed me to get into the industry and work along with 7 of my other brothers. With that, we've had about 2 ships through ABC that the B-men have been able to work. We really appreciate that we've had more rock barges and had warehouse work and still have the ferry to do. But that work doesn't always get down to the people who are limited members, because we still have to work our way up and have some seniority to get to that. So my hope is that we will see more work going forward so that I don't have to travel quite as much, because I've been spending a lot of time in the car ships in Tacoma and the cruise ships in Seattle. But I would love to work at home to see my children and have a little bit less of a commute. But until then, I appreciate all the efforts that are continuing, and I know that's going to take time. So just know that we are very grateful for all the efforts going on here, both today and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for engaging your children as well.
As much as they are with their Head Start on summer reading.
It's not a phone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to provide public comment today? Anyone on Zoom wishing to provide public comment?
It's all staff.
All staff? Okay. All right, we'll have one more chance for public comment after our regularly scheduled business. Carrie, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent agenda, please.
I motion to approve consent agenda items A through C.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
Commissioner Bell?
I have none.
And I'm fine with these as well. You can go ahead and,
Okay, motion to approve consent agenda items A through C.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell?
Yes.
And Commissioner Shepard is a yes as well. That is it for our consent agenda. We have no action items today, but we do have a presentation. I believe Mike Hogan is going to lead us off with a legislative update, and I see Ben on Zoom as well.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Hogan, Public Affairs Administrator. We wanted to come back and give you a quick recap of the legislative session. We presented earlier this fall and talked about kind of some of our priorities, and wanted to, now that the legislature concluded in April, come back and give you a report on what happened. And it was a highly productive session. It was terrific. And as you mentioned, Ben Buchholz, our state lobbyist, is on the line, and he'll get into some details. I was just going to give a few brief highlights, and also thank some people. You know, the session really started last summer with networking with the different legislators, with their staff, with our agency partners, Ecology working on budgets, what we were going to need for MACA cleanups, with the state broadband office on what our needs were, with the city, with the county, what their needs were, and with the Washington Public Ports Association, different partners, Pacific Northwest Waterways Association, the Washington Economic Development Association, all sorts of different partners on what our priorities were, and it always gets, our number one priority is always Matka, Matka, Matka. You gentlemen know how much cleaning up historic contamination does for our local economy, returning those properties to productive use, and how much work we've done and how much work we have ahead of us. And so this year there was $115 million in remedial action grants awarded through the state. The Port of Bellingham secured $29 million, so about 25% of the state total, which is absolutely terrific. However, for example, we secured $17.7 million for the Whatcom Waterway cleanup, but estimated total costs on phase 2 of that is about $160 million. So we have a lot of work to do, and it'll continue to be a huge priority both in Bellingham for our working waterfront, up in Blaine for our working waterfront. And so you'll hear Matka, Matka, Matka from here and from our state legislature for years to come. As part of that ecology funding, we also secured an additional $660,000 for habitat improvement designs up at the head of the Whatcom Creek estuary and at Squalicum Creek. Another action item that's been on our to-do list for several sessions has been extending the .09 rural sales tax. It's a huge economic development benefit throughout the county. We've done projects out at All-American Marine, at the electrification that's happening at the shipping terminal. It funds our regional economic partnership in part every year, so extremely important. It was set to expire in 2034. This year we were able to extend it to 2054, and so that also increases the bonding capacity for Whatcom County, and importantly it grandfathers in the counties that were rural prior to 2009. There's a population density of less than 100 persons per square mile definition, which we exceeded because there's been growth here, and so we're grandfathered in, so that extended that tool for years to come. Another important issue we worked hard on was state immunity for cargo ports. For many years, our shipping terminal team has met with the Northwest Marine Terminals Association to discuss rates, to discuss best practices. And a couple years ago, someone at the Federal Maritime Commission decided that that was antitrust violation and said that ports like Port of Bellingham couldn't meet to discuss that. And so that's a huge tool. We originally worked with the Federal Maritime Commission, but that was kind of a non-starter. You thought the railroads had bureaucracy, that was, it was going to take a long time. So we went and developed legislation which would essentially extend the state's antitrust immunity to those ports so we could meet for that issue. And it started off as a real long shot, but we have a great partnership with Washington Public Ports Association. Eric Fitz is the new executive director and really did a terrific job rallying the troops, and we passed that unanimously through the House and Senate, and we're able to extend the state's antitrust immunity. So it really gives an important tool for our team to meet with other ports. And not just talk about rates, but also, what are best practices, as for stormwater and all the other things that are happening. We also secured some funding to look at district energy, how we can enhance and extend the district energy system. We secured some money, Don's group, for the Agricultural Research Center, $750,000 for our farming communities, and so we're having discussions about that. Broadband is well funded, so we have more opportunities for grant funding for broadband. There was port electrification and alternative fuels, which gives $26.5 million for ports, so we'll be eligible for that in the coming years, and also streamline the derelict vessel program. So it was a very productive session, big challenges moving forward. Already the legislators talked about moving some of the Matka capital money into the operating funds for the 2025 session. So that combined with our projected needs, that's going to be a huge priority moving forward. So lots of success, and I'm going to turn it over to Ben to give you a little bit more details about the session. But really good for Whatcom County, and yeah, Mr. Buchholz.
All right, thanks, Mike. Good afternoon, commissioners. Thanks for the time to give you an update. Great presentation, Mike. Have a great night. We'll see you guys later. You pretty much, did I send you my talking points? Because I think you pretty much covered everything I was going to talk about. So great work on Mike's part this session. He did an excellent job in Olympia on behalf of the Port of Bellingham. Just really Mike mentioned a couple of our major priorities of legislation that got through, and a real team effort on House Bill 1257, which was the antitrust immunity. There was just a real coming together, I would say, of the Port Association and its membership. A great new addition with Eric Fitch as executive director. Eric is doing a great job there. Obviously, very close ties to the governor's office. I just talked to Eric, and he said that was one of his first jobs was working in the DC office for Inslee when he was a congressman. So obviously that relationship runs deep and runs way back. So Eric is doing a great job, and Mike did a great job testifying on 1257. Participating in all the weekly calls that we have on Monday at lunchtime, and just a real good team effort to get that bill through. So I want to give you sort of a high level, like Tom and I usually do, a high level review of the session, give you some of the sort of inside, detail and tidbits and drama that takes place. And Tom sends his regrets. He is on a road trip through part of rural California right now with his kids. And so I told him, hey, don't worry about where you're at 4 o'clock. I'll cover it. But he wishes he was able to be presenting to you. Trust me, he would much rather be presenting to you than in the car for 10 hours a day. So we just want to let you know, appreciate the work and have enjoyed representing you in Olympia for the Port of Bellingham. So it was a 105-day session, long session. Every 2 years we have a 105-day session where they write the 2-year budget that kicks in July 1st, 2023, will expire July 1st, 2025. So a lot of what takes place during the legislative session, has to do with budget negotiations, coming up with for projects that will go into the budget, into the capital budget, transportation budget, and then it all gets rolled into the 2-year operating budget. So a lot of work takes place over the 105 days. It's just sort of a nonstop process where staff are coming up with drafting the budget, and legislators are working out the details in long negotiating sessions. The final operating budget, 2-year operating budget for 2023-2025 came to just under $70 billion. So that when I started in Olympia 17 years ago, it was like right around 30 billion. So you can see just in 17 years, it's over, doubled, more than doubled in that amount of time. So getting to be a pretty large budget, a lot of great stuff went into the budget this year. And as Mike pointed out with some of the real highlights of the list of bills that we worked on, this turned out to be a very good year for Whatcom County in general. A lot of positive things in terms of policy and legislation for the county, as well as quite a bit of funding for different capital projects and operating budget items. So, a real round of applause and kudos to the legislative delegation. You have some great representatives and senators that represent the districts, and just a fantastic job on their part. for representing everybody in the district. So the legislation introduced, there were 2,300 bills plus more than 2,300 bills introduced. At the end of session, just under 500 of those bills passed the legislature and were signed by the governor. So that's a pretty substantial amount of legislation. That number is down slightly from pre-pandemic legislative years. There were some years where we were seeing over 3,000 bills introduced. So that 2,300 number is a little bit lower. Some of that has to do with some legislative staff rights. A bill that was passed a couple years ago that limited the amount of time that some of the legislative staff could work on campus. Sort of a movement to limit some of the really late or early mornings, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, some of those hours. So that could potentially be part of what we're seeing with a lower amount of bills being introduced. Could have something to do with staff time. May also just be, coming out of the pandemic and going from virtual to in person. That could be part of what we're seeing as well. The session wrapped up on April 23rd, and as you all know, read it in the paper that there was a half-day special session called on May 16th. That was to deal with the past state Supreme Court decision on with the Blake decision. And there had been a temporary fix on the Blake decision, which deals with individual possession of drugs, narcotics, sort of your harder drugs possession. And so that temporary solution was going to run out on July 1st if nothing was done. So the legislature brought up a permanent fix to that decision the last day of session. It came up around 1 p.m. and there was lengthy debate on the floor in the House, and the speaker ended up opening the vote, and it was open for over 4 minutes, which is a very sort of strange situation on the House floor, where usually roll call votes they're all electronic, so with a push of a button the vote is taken. Usually the vote is open for maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds at the most. The Speaker of the House held the vote open for 4 minutes while they were trying to get enough votes to pass the bill. They were unable to pass the bill. It was, I believe, the only bill that was brought up on the floor of the House that failed this session. And then about an hour after the bill failed, they adjourned the session. So on May 16th, they came back for a special session, and it lasted just a half day, and it was a worked out deal on basically possession of drugs to fix the Blake decision. And really what it was is a compromise of previous convictions of drug possession would potentially land the person in jail for up to a year. And then obviously the more times they're convicted of drug possession, then the longer the sentence would get. The real goal was to try to get some of those folks that get convicted, to try to get them not going to jail, but to treatment. That's the real solution that the House and Senate were trying to work on. So anyway, they did get a permanent Blake decision fix. So drugs are still gross misdemeanor if you knowingly possess them or publicly use them. And so after they passed the bill, half a day session, they adjourned, and we don't see any reason at this point that they'll come back for an additional special session in 2023. So we will see all of them in 2024. Before I get into just a few bills that Mike didn't cover, I wanted to mention that there have been some major leadership changes in the legislature, or there will be some major leadership changes. And I will tie back one of these leadership changes to why I believe some of the legislation that passed this year passed instead of being delayed like it had been the last few years. And that is with the possible appointment of Senator Christine Rolfes to the Kitsap County Commission. Senator Rolfes is what I would consider one of the most powerful people in Olympia. She writes the Senate operating budget and is the lead negotiator for all of the Senate on the 2-year operating budget. And she has put her name onto the list to be possible appointment to an opening on the Kitsap County Council Commission. And as of right now, it looks like she most likely will be appointed because of her experience. And she has said, if she is appointed, that she will resign from her seat in the legislature. The reason that's a big deal is, first off, she's been in that position a long time and has a lot of experience writing the operating budget. She's well respected by almost everybody in the legislature. And so it would be definitely a loss of serious experience and know-how on to put together the budget. And so the reason I started with her possible departure is that House Bill 1267, which is the .09 tax extension, that's used for, as Mike clearly pointed out, used for economic development and throughout Whatcom County. It's also about $3 million a year, I believe, for the county, and it's a big number when you count, when you look at going out to 2054. That bill had been around for several years, at least 4 or 5, and it always seemed to get stuck in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, where Senator Rolfes is the chair of the committee. And so that bill this year worked its way through the process, through the legislature, and was voted out and signed by the governor this year. And so I think I think there may be some correlation there about future plans and some of the bills that maybe had been slowed down by individuals or groups of folks. So just a great outcome that bill made it through the process. And then one other person I wanted to mention that's leaving the leadership teams in the legislature is Representative J.T. Wilcox. J.T. Wilcox is the minority leader for the House Republicans. About a week before session ended, he sent an email out letting everybody know that he would step back from leadership and that he would still remain a member of the House, a member of the legislature, but would not be in leadership. Representative Drew Stokesbury was appointed as his replacement. Representative Stokesbury is an attorney, younger individual, probably late 30s, early 40s, has a couple kids, younger kids. And so I think, great replacement to Wilcox, but nobody will be able to give as much time as Representative Wilcox did to recruitment of candidates and fundraising and items like that. So those are some of your sort of high level changes. The other thing I want to mention is there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking based on the upcoming governor's campaigns, and a new governor will be voted on for 2024. You have a lot of names being kicked around right now. Obviously, at the top of the list is Bob Ferguson, Attorney General Bob Ferguson. You also have Commissioner of Public Lands Hillary Franz, who has been on the short list of running for governor. And then you also have Senator Mark Mullet from Issaquah area, small business owner, has a couple pizza shops and a couple ice cream stores. It looks like he's definitely going to be in the race as well, sort of as a moderate Democrat. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out there. If I were a betting man right now, I would say that it's Bob Ferguson's race to lose. But stranger things have definitely happened, and that's why you play the game. So moving into some of the legislation that were priorities for us, Mike, again, like I say, stole a lot of my thunder and went right down the list. So I'll just mention some of the funding pieces that were received through Ecology and Remedial Action Grant Program. Mike mentioned, but the Cornwall Avenue landfill, that's 2.4 million. Central Waterfront, 2.6 million. Wacom Waterway, 17.7 million. There's also money for the Nooksack adjudication process, a total of 2.7 million and 300,000 in new money, which I don't know if directly impacts the port, but worth mentioning when it comes to it. Here's a couple more that I wrote down. May not directly impact the port, but in a way, I'm sure it will. The 23-hour crisis relief center was funded for $9 million. Wacom Dispatch, $1 million improvement. The Joe Martin Stadium, $700,000 improvement funding. Floodplains at Work, Phase 3, 10.3 million. And then the Swift Creek Natural Asbestos Flood Control and Cleanup Project, that was funded at $4 million. And then about $6 million in flood response funding. Funding of an alternative response team for floods, 1.1 million. So you can see it was a good year for Whatcom County in terms of funding. Let's take a look just quickly. We've mentioned 1257 antitrust immunity and the .09 tax extension. Both of those passed. House Bill 1084, Freight Mobility Board, that approves some changes to the definition of the board. They have to approve a new 6-year plan, and then funding has to go towards that 6-year plan as they work through their decisions on where the money goes from the Freight Mobility Board. House Bill 1753, I marked this one because we talked about this in our legislative preview, which was about derelict vessels, and that bill passed. It'll be implemented July 23rd of this year. Provides a notice of intent to obtain custody of a derelict vessel must be mailed within 10 days instead of 20 days prior to taking custody of the derelict vessel. Make several other changes in that bill, but I wanted to follow up that there were changes made to the Derelict Vessel Act and will kick in the end of July. There was a tax incentive passed for alternative jet fuel. That was Senate Bill 5447. Basically, if a new facility is built that can create 20 million gallons of alternative jet fuel in 1 year, they would qualify for a lower B&O tax rate of 0.275. That bill kicks in the end of July. There was money finally put towards House Bill 1258. If you're marking that down on your scorecard at home, House Bill 1258 increases tourism funding for Washington State up to $3 million in revenue. Comes from the taxes collected by lodge, hotels and car rentals and restaurants. So 0.2% of that would get kicked into a fund up to $3 million, and that would have to be spent on marketing campaigns to bring more tourism to Washington State. I'll mention one other bill, sort of lower on the list, but definitely something that that ports keep an eye on, and that is the Senate Bill 5267. That was the Railroad Workers Bill of Rights. It would increase the amount of workers on a railroad, on a train at any given point, increase the number for safety is what the reasoning is, and then also would put into statute how much time can be worked for each shift. It sort of flew in the face of what happened in Congress, in the federal Congress this year, where they adopted changes and a sort of a workers' bill of rights already. Obviously, that one, some of the railroad unions didn't feel like went far enough, and so this bill would have put into state law bigger crew sizes and more time off. However, that bill at the very last stop, it was on the House floor, ready to be run, and it ended up not making it across before cutoff, and so it died this session. I would, like I said, almost guarantee that bill, if I were a betting person, that bill will be back next year and the year after and the year after that. So something to keep your eye on. May not directly impact Port Bellingham, but definitely worth watching. So I'll stop there. Sorry if I ran over my time, but there's just a lot of information to process and pass on. And hopefully you get our report, weekly report. We will switch gears to a monthly interim report now that we're out of session. But that's always some good reading material right before bed. That'll put you to sleep for sure. And so we appreciate obviously working with you guys and also being able to pass our updates along to you so that you feel like we're keeping you updated on everything going on in Olympia. So thanks a lot. Happy to answer any questions if I can. If I can't answer them, I'll try to get you the information via email.
All right, thank you, Ben. Any questions, Commissioner Bell?
You mentioned early on that the budget was 70 billion, and it was, when you started 17 years ago, it was 30. If we stop sending you to the legislature, is there any way we could stop that? Is there a tie there at all, Ben?
I think, no, there's not.
Oh.
There's not. I'll say that right out front. But, I went to Olympia to be part of the solution, and I think I might be part of the problem now. So I'm not sure that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would lead off with the 17
Thanks.
years ago.
Yeah. Thanks for that
Line.
question. I appreciate that. Yeah.
No, thank you. And by the way, and also thank you for the work on the Blake decision. I think, not sure I'm as happy with the outcome as I would have been, but it was a heavy lift to begin with. It's a whole different environment down there these days, isn't it? All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Ken.
Commissioner Briscoe, any questions, comments?
Thanks, Ben. A lot, probably frustrating, a lot of headaches down there, but thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate the work.
All right. Thanks for the update, Ben. Thank you, Mike.
You bet. Thanks, Commissioner.
All right. That concludes our regular business for the day. I'm going to open up for one more call for public comment. Anybody in the room wish to provide public comment? Anybody on Zoom? Okay. Not seeing any, we'll move into other business. I'll start out with you, Commissioner Briscoe. Do you have anything for us today?
A couple things. I've been asked a few times, and I think about 7 years ago I brought this up. I was asked, and response from WTA then about having bus service to our harbor areas. They said they couldn't get enough people. I don't know if that's gonna be the case now, so I was thinking maybe we need to ask WTA why we don't have bus service to our harbor areas, the restaurants and so on down here. People are trying to use the bus more and stay off the roads. I think it's about time we had our bus services back down here. And I really don't want their answer to, well, there wasn't enough people before. That was 7 years ago.
Do we have a bus stop at the at the portal?
No. No, the bus doesn't go down Laurel and Granary yet. So when we met 7 years ago at WTA, they just didn't think they had enough ridership in the marinas. So I will get back with them. I think the marinas are busier now, much busier now than they were then. And the WTA has a new leader then. We all know Les Reardon from his time at both the Port of Everett, the City of Bellingham, and Schmelik, Sicken, and Davis. So I think I'll go take him to lunch and bring up the issue.
Yeah, I think, and I was asked this at some of the things I've been to recently, why we don't have bus service. And so we didn't used to have enough people, but we got a lot more people now. I mean, our waterfront, we over the last 7 years, we've built it up substantially. And I think our workers, some of our workers may not want to drive, maybe they could take a bus. So I'd like to see us look into that. So that was one of the things. I think last time I talked about testing noise levels during the week. Are we online to do that, or?
Yeah, we've, for the shipping terminal, yeah, we've done testing for both the ships that were here. We're going to order up some additional testing for the next ship, and then we'll do some testing when there's no ship here.
Yeah, I was more interested in the dumping, so.
Yeah.
Question, Bert, or Dr. Weber brought up the Snow Goose program. Do we assist that program in any way with a reduced mortgage rate for that vessel?
I think he moors at the Bellwether dock. I don't think he moors with us. I think he gets some deal with Bellwether. Yeah.
Okay.
We do coordinate closely with them. Oh, go ahead, Tiffany. She knows way more about this than I do.
Hi, Commissioners. Tiffany D. Simone, Director of Maritime. I'm not sure I know a lot more about this than you do, but I think we do scooch them over seasonally. We move them over in, yeah, it's a maritime term. I'm just kidding. So we do work with them.
Slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they do come over, we work with them on the
We sure
terms
do.
for them to be here. Okay, very good, thank you. Next question, it eluded me. Oh, clarification from Mike. We got 750,000 for, gosh, now that went away too. I didn't write it down. Oh, for the agricultural.
Yeah, Commissioner Don Goldberg, Director of Economic Development. Senator Shoemake put in a request for the Whatcom County Ag Research Center that we're trying to work with them on right now. So we were, it was approximately 762,000, I think, and we expect about 750 will be funding and the rest will be administration fees.
That's a good switch. Usually it's the other way around.
So Rob, myself, and the county and the Berry Commission, everybody are working on what that will look like as we move forward.
Okay, good. Thanks. Glad to hear that.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
Okay. Glad to hear about that berry lab. We've been talking about that for years.
Well, and I think this is going to be bigger than just a berry lab. That's one of the conversations we're having, is bringing in the dairy folks and bringing in the potato folks as well. So it'll be berries, potatoes, and dairy.
Good.
Cool. Commissioner Bell? Okay.
Seriously? It's one of those?
That's it. I'm gonna retort to the octane level discussion later, but I need to get some shoring up of my facts before I start spouting.
Okay.
I know. The lid was for lubrication. That's right.
Okay. Well, no items for me today, except I wanted to just thank all the staff. I heard great things about the circus, and it seemed like that was very well received. It's just fun to see all the activity down there, and I know it's folks are out and about. We got to host the governor at the waterfront, and we're really making that part of the community shine. So it's going to be a fun summer down there of activity, and looking forward to all the opportunities to eat, dine, recreate, and play, and thanks to the staff who's making this happen.
One more.
One more?
Question for Joe. How are we doing on the big crane over there with getting guys trained and operators ready to go for when we might need to use it?
Thanks, Joe.
Joe Schmidt, 830 East Douglas, Bellingham. We haven't really been doing anything with it until we get the dock reinforced where we can bring it out on the dock. Otherwise, it's just sitting there.
Okay.
But we do have some guys that are familiar with it. We just need
Something to do.
something to do with it, yeah.
So it's all ready to go and we got guys ready to run it. We just need something to do with it.
Well, and we need pier strengthening, so it can't go out on the face of the pier because it's not strong enough. So we've got a dredging project and a pier strengthening project that'll solve that.
Okay. Other things going good there?
Yeah.
Tough work, I know
Going
that,
good.
but
Yeah, still bringing rock in.
good.
We won't have a barge this weekend. The tug captain going in for open heart surgery, so he's out for a week or two. And then we'll be back going.
All right, thank you, Joe.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we're adjourned.